With the rise of illegal or modified Frankenstein e-bikes, this is creating confusion, damaging reputations, and putting the entire industry at risk.
And it's frustrating to see the bikes that are fairly obviously illegal with modified kits on bikes that weren't designed to be e-bikes.
There's the online marketplaces where a lot of the kind of unsafe and substandard and often illegal products come through without really any checks and balances from the market authorities. Very high-powered e-bikes.
But it's 15.5 miles per hour with continuous power output of 250 watts. There is an influx of product that does not meet that, and we need to safeguard those measures.
And because when a fire happens, it is so serious and so potentially even fatal.
Encouraging the industry to start lobbying and start talking about it sensibly with authority, we can start to make changes.
Welcome to BikeBiz Podcast, the voice of the cycle trade. Today we're talking about e-bikes and the E-Bike Positive campaign, because this issue directly affects what you sell, who trusts your products, and whether customers feel confident buying into e-bikes at all. And right now, with the rise of illegal or modified Frankenstein e-bikes, this is creating confusion, damaging reputations, and putting the entire industry at risk. So I'm joined by Scott Longstaff from Madison, Jonathan Harrison from ACT, and Peter Eland from Bicycle Association, bringing you brand, a retail, and a policy perspective to one of the biggest issues we face right now. So in this episode, I'll be asking, what is E-Bike Positive campaign? What does this growing problem mean for your business and the wider industry? And what is the E-Bike Positive campaign doing to fix it? You will hear practical insights, clear explanations, and what you can do, whether you're a brand, retailer, or a distributor. Because at the end of the day, this comes down to one question: can the industry rebuild trust in e-bikes before it's too late? Let's get into it. Welcome to BikeBiz Podcast. Today we are dealing with an existential threat to the whole supply chain, to the cycling industry at large. So let's start with the issue that everyone is talking about: the so-called illegal bikes, the Frankenstein bikes, the motorbikes that pass as e-bikes. And let's start with a question that actually makes me think, what is going on shop floor? You know, Jonathan, your perspective on retail and like actually the frontline reality, are illegal bikes actually showing up in shops? And is this a problem?
Absolutely, it's a problem, and they are showing up all the time. I get inundated with calls saying, what do I do in this situation? Or this has come into my store. And my advice is always pretty clear: if it's not a recognisable, reputable brand, don't let it inside your store. So absolutely is a problem, yes.
And I wanted to bring Scott in here because from a distributor / brand side, from your perspective, how much damage are unsafe or modified bikes doing to the consumer trust in e-bikes overall?
Well, I think that's the existential question, isn't it? We invest hugely in safe and legal products right across the board, and it's frustrating to see the bikes that are fairly obviously illegal with modified kits on bikes that weren't designed to be e-bikes in swathes across our high streets. And it's disappointing to see dealers having to question that. It's very simple, I think, for us and for dealers, and this campaign, the E-Bike Positive campaign, bears that out, to understand what is and what isn't a safe and legal e-bike. We invest huge amounts of money into the development, design, and the testing of these bikes, and we know that they're good and they can enhance lifestyles and enhance cycling and bring new cyclists into the industry. And that's what we're challenging ourselves to do, and we're challenging the trade to do. And so when you see the press and the coverage being stilted against the safe and legal e-bikes and casting those e-bikes that clearly are illegal as just e-bikes, it is hugely damaging, and it means that we risk losing the opportunity for growth in cycling. And that's the big challenge for us as a trade, not just in the UK but across the world. We've seen lots of international instances of this as well. Cycling business in the world has been slightly subdued, let's say, over the last few years. And this, we have an opportunity in our grasp to be able to grow it and grow it positively. And if we do so, we do risk that huge opportunity.
So, I mean, before we get to the opportunity, there is a problem that, is happening at large. And I wanted to bring Peter from a policy angle here, because this also concerns the government. It also concerns how the government is structuring so that these companies, these lobbyists, are not diluting what is and what is not considered as an e-bike, a safe e-bike. And my question to you is, is the government doing enough? Are we seeing a lack of interest in regulating these properly?
Yeah, okay, absolutely. And there's quite a lot of different things that the government needs to do. And we would kind of class those into three different areas. There's the online marketplaces, where a lot of the kind of unsafe and substandard and often illegal products come through without really any checks and balances from the market authorities, direct to consumers via these online marketplaces. The second thing we think is the food delivery sector, and particularly the gig economy riders, who are really forced by economic circumstance to use illegal bikes and to modify bikes at low cost, which is often where the fire risk comes from, because they're buying the very cheapest kits off the online marketplaces. And so we think that the operators of those gig economy services should be forced to take safety responsibility for those bikes to be safe and legal. And the third part of where we think the government should act is on the sale of e-bikes which are not road legal. So it remains legal to sell very high-powered e-bikes if you simply say that they are for private land use only. And that's not really more than a fig leaf in many cases. So we have three really clear areas where we think the government should act. On the first one, on the online marketplaces, they have some legislation going through, which is based on the Product Regulation and Metrology Act, which is a kind of wide-ranging act. That's yet to result in concrete measures. That will probably come towards the end of this year at the very earliest, more likely well into next year. On the gig economy, we've had many discussions. There doesn't seem to be much political will to make really serious changes there. And on the non-road legal sales, again, political will is the key issue here. And there's a private members bill was recently raised in the Commons, but that really has no chance of becoming law without government support. So, and that does not seem to be forthcoming.
So there is clearly a problem here. And so let's talk about what the industry is doing about it. So Peter earlier on mentioned about the E-Bike Positive campaign. So for anyone that is listening and still doesn't know about it, what is E-Bike Positive?
I'll very quickly start, and I'll go to Jonathan in just a moment. Just to say that the E-Bike Positive is what the industry has to do, because government is not going to do what we need it to do in a sensible timescale. So E-Bike Positive is our proactive, our kind of positive action to kind of address some of that existential threat that you were talking about, Pedro. So maybe I'll hand over to Jonathan, who's kind of representing the front line of retailers who really will put this to use in communicating a positive message, I think.
Absolutely, Peter, you're spot on there. E-Bike Positive is essentially the industry stepping up to protect the future of e-bikes in the UK. At its core, it's a collaborative, industry-led assurance initiative. And the key piece we're working on now is the Trustmark, which will help people identify safe, road legal, reputable e-bike brands and retailers.
So, Jonathan, let me just stop you there. Like, what is, you talk about the Trustmark for shop owners, for retailers that are listening to this. You talk about Trustmark, but can we actually differentiate, what is road legal and what is not? So we are, we know black and white what it is and what it isn't.
Yeah, so we know the law. I mean, it's well, Peter can probably tell better, but it's 15.5 miles per hour, with continuous power output of 250 watts. And that's clear. That's evident. However, like Peter alluded to, there is an influx of product that does not meet those measures. And we need to safeguard those measures. The reason we can use cycling infrastructure, cycle lanes, and the reason we don't have to wear helmets, license plates, mandatory insurance, is because they're classed as bicycles. And we really need to protect that. And that's what E-Bike Positive is all about. But it's also about giving clarity. Sorry, Scott, go on.
No. I think it's very, to answer the question, it's very clear to us what a safe and legal e-bike can be categorised as. E-Bike Positive is the marker, the kite flag, and the campaign which makes it coherent to the general public and to retailers. But behind that is a huge amount of testing and development and ISO standards, which across all parts that make up an e-bike, but the full e-bike itself, and that's important. So reaching the EPAC and the ISO standards are what we and the others on E-Bike Positive and many other brands, the majority of other good brands around the world adhere to. And that's the really important bit. It's very, very clear. And that makes up part of the audit that the Bicycle Association have put together for E-Bike Positive. But the E-Bike Positive kite mark is the consumer-facing standard as we see it, and why it's so important.
Yeah, so it's about giving clarity to consumers, to the media, and to policymakers about what a legitimate e-bike actually is.
Yeah, I was just going to say something similar, Jonathan. It's really, you can almost see it as an educational program as much as anything. It's really providing a really clear mechanism so that consumers can simply, go to a one-stop shop, find reputable brands, find reputable retailers, and they don't have to worry too much about the technical intricacies of what is legal and what isn't, because the retailer and the brands have done all that hard work, as Scott outlined. And then, as Jonathan says, simultaneously, it's super helpful when we're talking to policymakers, to other stakeholders like the fire and rescue services or the insurance industry, that we have a really clear, again, a mechanism to point to something that everyone can have confidence in, and as Jonathan says, safeguard that vital status that an e-bike is treated essentially like a bicycle in law. And I think that, as he says, that's a principle we must protect. Yeah.
So Jonathan was mentioning about the trust mark. So how it guarantees safety, it guarantees trust in the product. What exactly does it look like? How a consumer will be able to differentiate between an illegal product and the product that they can trust by recognizing this trust mark? What does it actually mean to the consumer?
Okay, so from a kind of really back to basics sort of level, E-Bike Positive is a kind of recognizable logo. It's something that has already been put out into the public space over the last few years, as your listeners will be aware, through the E-Bike Positive campaign, which reached, I think, 43. That's right, with Bosch, Cycling UK, ourselves, ACT, and it was a kind of really a media campaign as much as anything. We were kindly kind of gifted that mark by Bosch, who owned it, to be the industry scheme, and it's now completely industry owned by ourselves, the Bicycle Association, and the ACT. So this mark is kind of, we want to create a kind of Pavlovian response in consumers that when you see that mark, you're thinking safe and legal. And the way it will actually work is that mark will be promoted through a whole variety of channels and campaigns, and that will all funnel consumers either direct to the retailers, who are E-Bike Positive. The brands will also help funnel those consumers, or you can go direct to the E-Bike Positive website, which will be the kind of clearinghouse. And on the E-Bike Positive website, you have two very simple buttons: find a brand, find a retailer. That's how it kind of works. Of course, there's quite a lot of kind of mechanism behind getting on those lists of brands and lists of retailers. And I'm sure we'll talk more a little bit, maybe in the next few questions, about the how the brands are audited and checked, and the retailers, are added to that list, managed by Jonathan and the ACT.
I mean, that's a brilliant segue into, I guess, what needs to be the next question. So how does, from this, obviously there is a consumer kind of one, we talked about, Peter talked about the misinformation that there is in the media, and, consumers are yet kind of not quite sure what an e-bike should be, or how safe it needs to be. And so that differentiation can still feel a bit muddy, if you will. So how do you go about fixing that?
I'll step in there. So what Peter said there, is a brilliant summation of the project. But again, to me, it's about giving the general public and retailers a marker which defines what is good, safe and legal and what isn't. There's a lot of misunderstanding in the general public, I think, at large, and in the media certainly, in as much as what actually denotes a safe and legal e-bike. And conversion kits or unsafe e-bikes are out there, and people think that they're just in the general parlance. Well, actually, and coming on to conversion kits, because I think that is a big problem. Retailers and consumers think that they're safe. They use them, they fit them, when they shouldn't, because the implications of fitting, regardless of what e-bike conversion kit it might be, makes that bike something very different to it was originally designed for. So this e-bike positive marker sets aside for retailers, for consumers, but also for the media, which is a big problem, sets aside what they can guarantee to be safe and e-bikes. There will be safe and e-bikes that don't have the e-bike positive marker, and that's a job for the BA and for us as an industry to get around and get more people signed up and involved. But it does at least give a line of delineation of what people can trust and rely on that is safe. And if we can get to a point where the majority of e-bikes in the UK are ridden with an e-bike positive brand, then we will have started to realise the opportunity that exists.
Yeah, I'd maybe just add that kind of, I'm not sure if the question was asking whether there is some lack of clarity in the current regulations around what is a safe and legal e-bike, or whether it's simply the public understanding of that, which is kind of where the issue is. In my view, I think the rules are pretty clear. There's guidance on the Bicycle Association website and many other places. Most of it, I suppose, some of the guidance in other places is not always 100% comprehensive or accurate. But yeah, no, I think there's not really a problem with the rules themselves. I would completely agree. There's a lack of understanding in the general public, and to be honest, it's always difficult to communicate that level of technical detail, and that's really why we don't have to. If you simply have a mark you can look for and know that work has been done for you, so that's again the secondary aim. Yeah.
So obviously there's the education and raising awareness, the public awareness of these trust mark. But before we get to that, we need to also educate the retailers, the people working on the ground and actually selling e-bikes. So what is the e-bike positive campaign doing to educate, to get on the ground and actually prepare these retailers to make sure that they are doing their best to only sell products that comply with the trust mark?
Yeah, you're right, Pedro. So, retailers are the front line. They're talking to consumers every day. So they need to be equipped with the best knowledge they can. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but we created the retailer e-bike positive pledge, probably going back about 18 months to 2 years ago. And it was a great starting point. We had about 400 retailers signing up, and it did exactly what we needed it to do. It was basically 400 retailers that committed to sell, retail, service, repair only road legal e-bikes from trusted suppliers. And then in turn, share that information, safety information, user instructions with any customer walking through their door. And like I said, we had 400 sign up, but as we're evolving e-bike positive from consumer campaign to Trustmark. We are about to move from that pledge to a full assurance scheme commitment, which basically means more robust and stronger criteria and adopting methods to police that retail network.
Yeah, just to add as well that the E-Bike Positive brands also have a big role in supporting their retailers. Obviously in terms of what they do with the bikes they supply, but also just in terms of the training and the education side of it as well.
Yeah, and I think we're us and the others that commit to the E-Bike Positive campaign. It's our job, and we are proactively filtering and educating our retail base to adhere to and understand what all the things that are involved in the campaign, and to be able to supply safe and legal road e-bikes. We covered it extensively at Ice Bike and at Madison. We're absolutely committed to educating, or our part in educating consumers, but also retailers. As Jonathan said, the first port of call for many of these new cyclists, because lots of them are potential new cyclists, and that's again going back to the big opportunity and the thing we can't miss.
I mean, one of the things that makes me wonder is like, there is the education piece to retailers, and then the retailers with this information and confident that they can then pass on this knowledge and pass this trust to the consumer side. And I wanted to understand if there is positively or negatively any gatekeepers that positively or negatively affect the outcomes that you are looking for with the campaign.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if you mean gatekeepers to those retailers, or they're certainly gatekeepers to, for example, access to buildings for e-bikes, which is a huge topic around, the kind of blanket policies which came into place after the reports of e-bike fires in particular, have led to restrictions on parking e-bikes in a lot of premises, and that's a really concerning trend. And similarly, you'll have seen, for example, is that the question? Or
that's one way to look at it, because we do, we are, as an industry, we can sell e-bikes that have the trust mark, but then if we have insurers, if we have landlords that do not allow the safe keep of the bike indoors, or they not insure the bike, then we have gatekeepers that are negatively affecting the outcomes of the campaign. On the other hand, we also have positive gatekeepers, such as brands that are educating their own consumers on their own websites, the distributors educating the brands, public awareness at large, and those are the positive gatekeepers. So it goes both ways. So there is a natural conflict going on, and that there is a bigger piece of, you, in the same way we talked about the government not being so forthcoming and helpful in creating this change, we bridge somehow this.
I think certainly we have regular contacts with the insurance sector, and I was just a few weeks ago meeting with the Association of British Insurers, and it's been massively helpful in those conversations to have e-bike positive developing as a mechanism, so that they and everyone else has a way to at least start to distinguish a good from a bad e-bike. Now, I don't want to over-promise here, and we have to be realistic that e-bike positive is about initially about what happens when about the status of a bike when it leaves the retailer as a new bike. After a certain number of years in private ownership with the customer, we can't guarantee that it hasn't been damaged, it hasn't had a counterfeit battery fitted, it hasn't been tampered with. We can't guarantee that for sure. Maybe a retailer can make some pretty good checks about that, but that's another story. So the insurance industry is, I think, really willing to listen, and they really, I think, appreciate the intention of e-bike positive. What we can't promise right now is that it will immediately see bans lifted. I think, looking at it from the insurance angle, they are quite reasonably still concerned that because the government hasn't done all the things we need the government to do, there are still undeniably dangerous, in terms of fire risk, bikes out there. And because when a fire happens, it is so serious and so potentially even fatal, really hard to put out. It's not unreasonable for a residential landlord, for example, to consider that some of their tenants might possibly be doing a bit of gig economy delivery riding on the side, and perhaps they're at a high, like if they have an e-bike, it could be a very high risk e-bike. So I would be positive. I would say e-bike positive is an absolutely essential first step here, and but equally, I think we have to be realistic that that's a problem which is not going to go away overnight. But certainly building on e-bike positive is the way we are going to find a mechanism for, we hope, very, very safe and legal, good quality e-bikes to get back to what the situation was before, really, that they are recognised just like any other consumer goods to be very, very low risk.
I think it's also, sorry, Peter, I think it's also note that there's a political will that we need to overcome, and legislation is a very, very, very important part of the discussion, and it's a big mountain to climb, and steps are in place. But again, at Ice Bike, we had Will Norman from the Mayor's Office and Trudy Harrison, an ex-Transport Minister. They know and understand a lot of these problems, and they need help. And the industry, by doing this and encouraging the industry to start lobbying and start talking about it sensibly and with authority, we can start to make changes. And those negative gatekeepers, as you talk about, we can start to erode them. Not doing anything is our biggest enemy at the moment. And whilst some of them might be small steps, at least they are steps in the right direction. And I think having commitment and understanding from the UK trade as a starting point is something that we proactively do.
Yeah, just to add, actually, that e-bike positive is a fantastic tool to kind of hedge against some of the potential even more negative outcomes which could come from legislators in particular deciding that all e-bikes are dangerous and therefore they all need to be, type approved like motor vehicles, or they all need to have mandatory third-party insurance, and then someone will pipe up about helmets, and then et cetera, et cetera. So by really flagging that the industry is responsible, we have safe and legal products, here's a list, we make it much harder for probably a well-meaning but perhaps less clued up legislator to really just advocate for something which is so broad brush that it tars everyone with the same brush. So yeah, it's a really important defensive measure, I think.
So I wanted to bring Jonathan here we know the solution. You have extensively explained it and what the industry needs to do next. So from a retailer perspective and listening to these podcasts, how do I get involved? How does participation actually look like in terms of, I want to get involved, this looks and sounds reasonable, give me the framework to get started.
Okay, good. So just to reiterate where we've come, so we've got quite a structured plan to really launch e-bike positive. The first thing we need to do is build industry support. As we've spoken about, starts with the brand audit, and then we get retailers to sign up to the criteria, and I'll come back to that. But it only going to work if we get the whole sector behind it. It's really important we collaborate across the whole sector. Then we can operate at the scale that's required. Then we have the consumer launch and trying to change the narrative in the media. And then alongside that, we need the public affairs activity. And then finally, it's the gatekeepers that we've just discussed about. So it's educating all of those groups. Now, with the retailers, as I mentioned previously, we already had 400 odd sign up to the pledge. What's going to happen over the next month or so is they're all going to be asked to re-sign the pledge. As I mentioned before as well, it has more robust criteria for them to agree to. If a retailer is interested, it's quite simple for them to find the information. They then need to agree to it. And once they've agreed to those terms, they'll be considered an e-bike positive retailer.
And what does that come with? What responsibility, apart from Obviously, on top of that, you need to make sure that you're following the guidelines on that framework. But kind of walk me step by step of what actually then on the as a retailer, what am I going to need to do? So, if for instance, let me give you an example. If a customer brings in any bike, and I can immediately see that there is something wrong with it. They say that the battery is not charging, and I find it something that is not looks quite right. Maybe it's not compliant with all the legislations, the framework that E-Bike Positive campaign kind of is pushing forward. What do I do?
So, I mean, for a start, I think it's relatively easy for a retailer to distinguish between a road legal and safe e-bike and those other products that are not road legal and safe. So in the instance you're describing, the retailer has to make a decision whether they're going to work or repair or service that so-called e-bike or not. That's step one. And I think the majority that I speak to are well informed there and make the right decisions. So firstly, step one is to pledge only to work on road legal, safety tested e-bikes from reputable brands. That's number one. Pretty straightforward. Then we can go above and beyond that and to say you should only be supplying safe spare batteries and compatible chargers, and it should always come with information from the brands. So that's the only way you should be supplying these spare batteries and chargers. You should also be talking about, I will only repair road legal e-bikes and I'll only modify in accordance with what the manufacturer's instructions are saying. It's all of these points that are really important. And to be an e-bike positive retailer, they need to be doing all of them. That's the important part.
Yeah. Could I just add, a lot of those were developed in conjunction with trading standards. And I think actually a lot of it's not really that onerous in a way. I mean, it's about being professional and following the, keeping up the level of safety which has been engineered into those products by responsible actions. And also just to add, I think if you do sign up as an e-bike positive retailer, we will support you. The campaign will be producing various types of collateral and materials, which perhaps Jonathan can mention in more detail. But you're not. It's not simply a case of signing up and then you're on your own. There's also a kind of direct benefit that people are driven to you as an e-bike positive retailer, and you can then convert that to customer confidence, I suppose. Yeah.
Exactly. Being known as a retailer in your locale that is the bastion of good advice and safe advice for this myriad bikes and legislation and all that stuff, and be able to navigate through lots of bad publicity and knowing that your house isn't going to burn down and all those things, that's a real positive for retailers. That's something that they can grasp and be known for and benefit their businesses in their local areas.
Yeah, I mean that might even extend to, like, if the local paper's got a story, they might come to you and you might be able to leverage that reputational gain. Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to ask as well, Jonathan talked about the pledge, the 400 retailers already pledged to the e-bike positive. Now, I wanted to kind of bring in Scott on that perspective from the brand side, because brands are key to also making sure that the campaign is successful. So, in your perspective, are brands listening? Are brands thinking and coming to you and saying, "Yeah, this is what I want to do"?
We, with Ridgeback Bikes, Genesis Bikes, and Saracen, our own bicycle brands, we own them, we develop them, we design, we market them, we take them to market, etc., etc. It's quite easy for us. We're committed to this, and it's a huge investment for us on a product level, but also it's our responsibility to market that and be the purveyors of good practice, and that's important. But we're one of lots and lots and lots of bike brands which we would consider to be good, solid, safe, legal, and responsible brands. We need all of them to come along onto this project as well, because without that mass sign-up effect, it does diminish the value of e-bike positive. We're right behind it. We do as much as we possibly can to support it. And the audit process that got us onto the registry wasn't insignificant, but it certainly wasn't onerous from a brand perspective, because you would like to think that companies like Madison, brands like Ridgeback, Saracen and Genesis, we do things properly, and most of the UK brands do things properly. So it's not something that should be feared, but it should be something that brands locally in the UK, but internationally as well, need to come along and help raise the profile of good, safe e-bikes, because it will drive new cyclists into the market. It will drive new business. It will drive the general lifting of our trade, because it doesn't necessarily mean, and we're a small player really in the e-bike market, but we realise that if we can get more people cycling on safe bikes and enjoying cycling, then that lifts the business right across everything that we do, from parts, accessories, clothing, for retailer benefits, and from like Madison as well.
Can I just add a bit of a status update on where we are with the kind of sign up of all of these brands? So we released a kind of early adopter first batch, which included all of the Madison brands. It was several months ago now, and we had 11 brands in that first batch. Before the public launch, we are prepping a second batch, and obviously, I would respect the confidentiality of all the people who are in the process. But I will say we have some very well-known names. I think some very major high street retailers and retail chains. And I wouldn't like to guess a percentage of the kind of e-bikes going onto the market each year, but I'm sure it'll be over half, and probably considerably higher than that at launch of the full launch. The other just aspect to mention was Scott mentioned the international dimension of this, and we've been having some really interesting conversations with some of our equivalent trade associations in other countries, not just in Europe, because of course for many international brands it would make far more sense for any program like this to cut across all of their major markets and not simply be for little old UK, which is not a huge market in e-bike terms internationally. So again, don't want to overpromise, but this is kind of in the works. We have some real interest, and it would be fantastic from our point of view if this could be a European initiative, or even a world bicycle industry initiative. So yeah, by all means, if any other country trade associations are listening to this and haven't already been in touch, we'd love to talk further about that. And it would make it a lot easier for some of the big international brands to really see the value beyond just the UK market.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I was, one of the things that comes to my mind is that, we with E-Bike Positive, you're looking at the UK market, but you obviously brands operate at the global level. They will obviously have regional operations, but they have to cover whole kind of need for specific regions. They will have different requirements and so on. So it sounds like a big work is happening in the background to get these global brands onto the campaign, to kind of bring it in, and they're like,
that is true. But actually, a lot of those global brands are already significant members of the Bicycle Association, and the way we have structured the participation for brands, the cost of actually the additional cost of joining as an E-Bike Positive brand and having this audit done it's not very large in the grand scheme of things. So it is certainly within the capacity of the national representation of those brands to sign that off, and I think we will have again. Can't reveal the names, but by the when we go to a public launch, I think most of those major international brands you might be thinking of will be on board.
This begs the question: what does, for you, all three of you, how will you measure? What will be the metrics for success? Let's say in 3 years time, in 5 years time, that you'll say, we are measuring using these metrics, and we know that if we hit them in 5, 2, 3 times, whatever, we know that we have been successful with our efforts.
Yeah, we've had quite a few conversations about this, and the simplest and best is e-bike sales. We want, currently UK is around 150,000 e-bikes a year through the kind of, that's excluding direct to consumer and kits. But, that's a tiny level compared to mainland Europe. And there's no, well, there may be some little cultural differences, and, maybe the road situation is different. But in the grand scheme of things, we shouldn't be selling 10 times less than France or whatever it is. So there's a huge, that's the simplest and best metric, perhaps. I mean, there are other metrics. We could look at media coverage and how often, if there's an article about e-bikes, we want e-bike positive to be mentioned. So how often does that happen, for example? Jonathan, do you want to come in with any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think metrics in terms of the first stage, which is industry engagement, it's about monitoring the amount of retailers that sign up and the amount of brands that are signed up and participating. And I think that's the first stage. And then, like I said, we move on to the other areas. So consumer reach, which we can start to measure what reach we've had and what effectiveness, and in which publications, and how often is e-bike positive mentioned. And then further that, then it's all about government and policy. And it should become quite clear, if policies change the way we want it to be, that we've had success.
Yeah. Oh, there's also, there's kind of levels of consumer awareness, and actually that might also come through into some of the government retail survey activity. The Office of Product Safety and Standards, for example, does a consumer survey which touches on e-bikes every so often. So there are kind of more metrics than we can shake a stick at. But
if we can get there's some certain tabloid papers to change their narrative and distinguish between illegal and legal, that would be a great one to get, wouldn't it?
Fantastic. And of course, the other one is to sort of to have, well, another. I suppose it's a target more than a metric is, but I would absolutely love for the insurance industry. They've got sold secure for bike locks. So could they have e-bike positive for e-bikes in a similar kind of way? If you want a good cycle theft policy, you need to have a sold secure diamond lock or whatever the criteria may be. If you want to add your e-bike to your so it could be recognised as in a formal manner by the insurance industry, and that's again a longer term goal.
As it's been touched before, is that we as an industry need to collaborate, and if we are able to work together, then that brings everyone up. Consumer trust is earned, and you get to sell more bikes because people trust in the product that you're selling, and that kind of then starts rippling effect on the wider society. The negative gatekeepers might change their views, and so forth.
100%. And there's also a kind of just to say there's a kind of I suppose a critical mass of awareness and publicity. So for more players in this market who are consistently on message, e-bike positive, safe and road legal, that just everyone can send that message. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, that's a great point, and achieving critical mass. That's where things like start happening at large scale, and that's probably another metric of success. I wanted to now bring to a close the discussion, and ask two fundamental questions that I ask all of the time of my guests at the BikeBiz Podcast. And these questions are open for everyone, as all of them have been in the past. But what is the one thing that, as an industry, we should stop doing right now?
I'll start then. So for me, stop doing, and this counts for anybody who's got a vested interest in or has a business in selling bicycles and being the advocates and evangelists of cycling. And that's just don't be benign. There's always something you can do. If you can, sign up to the E-Bike Positive campaign, but stop navel gazing. Stop looking over at what is happening over there. Legislation. There are always headwinds in whatever we do in life, but realise there's something we can do about it, and that being what we can do, which is sign up to the E-Bike Positive campaign for a start. But like I said before, at Icebike we had local authority people like Will Norman in London that encourages people in the trade to lobby, to make people make legislators and politicians aware of the problems. If you see something that you don't agree with, make them aware, and write letters, write emails, and just bring that conversation to the fore. But also challenging media. If you see a media report in your local newspaper which says e-bike causes fire or e-bike theft is on the rise or whatever it might be, challenge it, because it's illegal e-bikes, it's illegal products that are causing the problem. So be proactive at every single level that you can.
That segues into mine, which is stop tolerating misinformation, whether that's unclear messaging, questionable products, turning a blind eye to the negative media narrative. Call it out, be heard. Let's make a difference together.
Mine's a little bit crafty. It might not be really negative, but I suppose don't be shy. Don't be shy about explaining to everyone who will listen the huge lengths that the reputable industry does go to provide safe and road legal products and the consumer benefits that follow from that. Because you'll be able to get that bike repaired. If it's a non-road legal thing, no reputable dealer will touch it. So there are. Don't be shy. We've got a really strong case with e-bikes, and we shouldn't let the negative stuff cow us into submission here. We've got some fantastic products, and we can really be proud of the safety and the enjoyment they provide.
So now there comes the last question. What's one thing that the industry should start doing? Scott, I'll start with you. You kind of already you morphed the two questions into one, but I would just wanted to.
I guess what I would encourage people to do is to understand the opportunity and get excited about that opportunity. How you can grow your business and how you can make more of what you do and encourage cycling. So understand and get excited about the opportunity.
I'll go next, following the same pattern. It's start speaking with one voice as an industry. So we all need to get together on this. Individually, we're all separate businesses. Together, we're one loud voice, and we can start making changes on messaging and how we engage with government and the public. So
100%. I was going to make a very similar point, which was and the vehicle for that alignment is the industry's trade associations. And I don't want to be self-serving here at all. I would encourage retailers to join the ACT, brands and other associated companies to join the BA. We work very closely together. We're super happy to do so. And together, if you, the industry, think we're not doing something we should be, join and make us do it and hold our feet to the fire. We are here to drive the market and grow that market for the whole industry. And, we can only do that with the industry's support and direction. So please join up. Please, make your voice heard in the trade associations, because that's what we do.
Brilliant. I wanted to thank you, Peter, Jonathan, Scott, for your time and for your in-depth explanations of what it means for retailers, what it means for brands to come on board and join E-Bike Positive campaign, because it's essential to collaborate, work together, rather than against each other, because that's how we grow sales, that's how we grow our market share, and that's how we bring more people that do not think of bikes as a reasonable way of transport. And that's how we bring them in, by making sure that we are giving them tools that they can trust to ride. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and make sure to follow BikeBiz Podcast wherever you listen. It really helps more people like you to find the show.